So call the clerk.
Executive business, order of the day number 5, Gaming Machine Compulsory Surrender Amendment Bill 2024, detail stage, resumption of debate on the question that clause 1 be agreed to.
The question is that clause 1 be agreed to. Mr. Braddock? No? So the question is that clause 1 be agreed to. Those of that opinion say aye. Contrary, no. The ayes have it. Now I have Mr. Braddock, I believe. On the advice. Okay, so the question is that clause 2 be agreed to. Those of that opinion say aye. Contrary, no. Declare the ayes have it. Question is that clause 3 be agreed to. Those of that opinion say aye. Contrary, no. Declare the ayes have it. Question is that clause 4 be agreed to. Those of that opinion say, Dr. Paterson.
I'm going to speak to this one, please. I want to start by saying that ACT Labor is strongly...
Are you moving?
I want to speak to the clause.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you.
Explaining why we're not moving.
Righto.
I want to start by saying that ACT Labor is strongly supportive of this bill. In fact, we believe that this reduction of machines should continue for the long term. As ACT Labor gaming spokesperson, I developed amendments to the Gaming Machine Compulsory Surrender Amendment Bill 2024 to see a progressive reduction of machines by 500 every 4 years for the next 20 years. This would leave 1,000 poker machines in the Territory by 2045. I went public with these amendments in early June. We have chosen not to move these amendments today as we have not secured the support from the Greens or Liberals to progressively reduce the machine numbers any lower. ACT Labor will support this bill unamended to see machine numbers reduced to 3,500 by July 2025. Unfortunately, the amendments I proposed in June to reduce machine numbers sparked a serious adverse reaction from the ACT Greens. What has followed has been spiteful political game playing and threats, which obviously played out publicly when the Greens went public with their multiple amendments and motions to try to brutishly secure an outcome that they wanted at all costs. The Greens have unfortunately played one game too many. I received an email at 10:45 this morning from Greens leader Minister Rattenbury stating that they would in fact support our amendments. Only after every amendment and gameplay they had exhausted was ruled unconstitutional and out of order. Through this process, the Greens have attempted to discredit my reputation, have attacked our caucus and party, and have at every turn worked to further their rigid view of a $180 million central monitoring system at all costs, rather than a measured, considered approach to public policy. And let it be on the public record, it was the ACT Greens that have obstructed a long-term plan to reduce gaming machines in the Territory. It's all too little too late. Instead, ACT Labor is very proud to take our comprehensive plan to reduce gambling harm to the people of Canberra this election. A re-elected ACT Labor government will introduce legislation to see machines reduced by 1,000 by 2045. ACT Labor will introduce mandatory account-based cashless gaming. We will introduce mandatory pre-commitment measures, mandatory breaks in play, strengthen self-exclusion and explore third-party exclusions, among other harm reduction measures. Labor also understands that the club sector will require support as they divest from gaming machine revenue. A re-elected Labor government will commission an independent inquiry to advise government of any further necessary steps to develop and implement a strong community club transition plan, which was good to see was supported by all parties on Monday. We will also support a club diversification team established in the public service to support clubs to see with their transition pathways. Labor is the only party with a policy on the table this election to remove gaming machines from our suburban clubs. Labor is proud to take our comprehensive policy package to the election this October so the people of Canberra can have their say. And as this will be the last time I speak in the 10th Assembly, I would like to say to the people of Canberra who are harmed by gambling, I remain steadfastly committed to addressing gambling harm. And to the club sector, I do strongly believe in supporting the club sector to transition. I think our clubs can be leaders in Australia to demonstrate that it is possible to have a thriving club sector without a reliance on poker machine revenue, without the harm caused by gambling in our community. And I'm committed to working with you to achieve this vision. Thank you.
The question is that clause 4 be agreed to. Mr. Parton.
Yeah, I was looking for a spot to speak, and Dr. Paterson sort of paved the way for me to do that. It's been remarkable to watch this stoush between the two governing partners. It's just been remarkable. And, you know, obviously I'm not a part of what goes on between the two of you, but I sense that this particular issue has potentially been the lowest point in the power sharing shenanigans of the entire term. I was dismayed at what was before us in regards to the amendments, none of which I assume are going to be moved here today, because the Greens want to implement this central monitoring system, which you know is going to cost $180 million over a long period of time, but you know it's not something which is going to leave the clubs that are there at the moment remaining. And again, as has been pointed out by Mr. Barr in this chamber, it's very easy to just jump in the car and drive to Queanbeyan. You've beaten the $180 million ploy, and additionally, you know, it's not clear who is paying, and I know that in conversations publicly, Mr. Rattenbury, you know, has indicated that there could be some government spending, there might not be, but principally it's going to be borne by the clubs. Dr. Paterson, and let's be honest about it, Dr. Paterson's a prohibitionist. She just doesn't want poker machines here at all. And I don't know, typically when those of us here on the evil conservative right are dealing with the sweet, sweet left, typically we do come across people who are ideologically driven. The ideological dogma from Dr. Paterson is much stronger than that from Mr. Rattenbury in this space. And, you know, Dr. Paterson talked about the fact that she got an adverse reaction from the Greens to her plan. It wasn't just from the Greens, and it wasn't just from us. It was from pretty much every club across town. And, you know, I know in the motion that we had earlier in the week, we allowed Mr. Braddock to amend the bit that said the reaction from clubs is that either one of these policy proposals would lead to the entire collapse of the sector. And Mr. Braddock wanted that to amend it to be the reaction from clubs ACT. I can take you out there club by club if you want, Mr. Braddock. We can go down to Vikings, we can go to Eastlake, we can go to Ainslie, we can have a beer wherever we want, we can even have a slap on Where's the Gold if you want, and try and get a jackpot. And I can tell you that the reaction universally across the clubs was, this is going to bury us. This is going to bury us. And you know, in making the remarks that I make, I don't want to downplay the concern about gambling harm, but I think that things are moving in the right direction here in the ACT, and I'm extremely mindful of what a large role the club sector plays in the fabric of the ACT. Dr. Paterson mentioned the inquiry that's been agreed to and said that it was wonderful that it got Liberal support. Well, I kind of sort of brought it forward in the motion, and I'm pleased that it did get support from all three parties when we debated that on Tuesday, and I hope that, you know, whoever finds themselves in this place follows up on that motion being passed and does establish, you know, a robust inquiry that will look at the good, the bad and the ugly and come up with some genuine recommendations and some genuine pathways forward. And I mean, I note that one of the things that will be examined is the potential value of harmonisation between New South Wales and the ACT regulation on harm minimisation objectives. And again, as we pointed out in the chamber earlier in the week, there is a CMS. There is a CMS that New South Wales are operating, and you know, it's potentially a more efficient way, if indeed an agreement can be struck, to somehow get on board that train. But so that's I believe that we would be debating amendments today, and we're not. And I'm pretty pleased that everyone's just going to put their guns on the table and leave the bar. Thank you.
Okay, so just give me a moment. So the question is that clause 4 be agreed to. Mr. Braddock.
Mr. Assistant Speaker, there's no secret. There are amendments that I wanted to move today, but they were ruled out of order. When I was drafting my amendments, Parliamentary Council was operating on the assumption that, and I quote, a bill for an act to amend the Gaming Machine Act and related purposes meant that anything which amended the Gaming Machine Act could be in scope of the bill, and that only the short title would need to be varied to align with the expanded bill scope. Had Parliamentary Council not been operating under that assumption, which was at the time thought to be a reasonable assumption, they would have most certainly given me different advice. I wish we had the opportunity today to debate the substantive policy question as to what is the best approach to minimise gambling harm for the Canberra community as a whole, but unfortunately that's not going to be quite possible today. In particular, because my amendments were designed to contribute to the achievement of the Parliamentary and Governing Agreement, Appendix E, Point 3, which says, and I quote, we will establish a rigorous across-venue self-exclusion regime across the ACT for people experiencing harm from gaming with significant penalties for breaches, end quote. And I'd just like to re-emphasise the point, or the words, across-venue. I won't relitigate the arguments from earlier this week, but will note the importance of ensuring suitable safeguards are in place for all gaming machines here in the ACT. This will remain an area for future consideration and reform with the ACT government in this place. Because it's not over. The Canberra Gambling Reform Alliance isn't going anywhere. The National Alliance for Gambling Reform isn't going anywhere, and unfortunately the vested gambling interests aren't going anywhere either. Unfortunately, I'm unable to put the question to this place so that Canberrans know where their parties stand on an important gambling harm minimisation. Respecting the Speaker's ruling and recognising the scope of the agenda today, I will relieve those parties of the burden of putting it on the record and do not seek to suspend standing orders to debate my amendments. For the sake of transparency, I've been informed that the Canberra Liberals would vote down my amendments, which was, I think, a missed opportunity to be part of the Balance of Power party. And in response to Mr. Paterson's invite to take me out for a beer to any club, I'd like to take him up on that offer. I'm very happy to do so, maybe just after the election. And I'm happy to attend any club he chooses, as long as I also get to choose one. And I can open your eyes to a club that exists without pokie machines. And there we can also enjoy a drink together and discuss the various merits of the two. I am bamboozled by Dr. Paterson has decided to not move her amendments, despite the fact the Greens have confirmed multiple times, both verbally and in writing, that we would support him. If Dr. Paterson thought that was her approach to addressing gambling harm in the ACT, why does she not move him today? It has been widely communicated on social media about how the Liberals and Greens won't support her measures, and inviting members of the public to contact us and pressure us to get us on board. This makes me question, was there ever an intent to move the amendments in the first place? Or in the absence of her amendments, what is going to be the plan in ensure that we can address the gambling harm that is occurring right now within our community? In this politically tawdry episode, I'm glad one element from my amendments have been adopted by the government with its joint announcement earlier this week, and that is for the regulated reduction in operating hours of EGMs to 10 a.m. to 2 a.m. EGMs would not be able to operate between 2 a.m. and 10 a.m. each day, providing a mandated break in play and reducing harm. Turning off poker machines between 2 a.m. and 10 a.m., and these are the hours where most pokies harm occurs, is a recognised harm reduction measure that will make a difference. Nothing good can happen in front of the poker machine at 3 a.m. in the morning. And I am happy to have contributed in a small way to achievement of this reform, which I understand that the government has committed to work towards in the next term. There is, however, more work to be done to help protect Canberrans from these addictive and harmful machines.
Members, the question is that clause 4 be agreed to. Mr Atterbury.
Well, thank you, Mr Assistant Speaker. I've been in this place for a while, and I reckon I've seen most things. But today is a surprising new standard, perhaps a new low, when it comes to politics in this place. Now, the actual bill itself is reasonably ordinary, and I think is largely uncontentious. The move to reduce the number of EGM authorisations in the ACT to 3,500, I believe it's going to pass, and this is a positive development. It delivers the program that we've been working on for some time now, which I've explained in this place before, which was the commitment to reduce to 4,000 that the Greens took to the 2016 election, was implemented through the parliamentary agreement, and yes, Minister Ramsey implemented it, and I'm grateful he did that. And then the subsequent commitment at the 2020 election from the ACT Greens to further reduce to 3,500. I think that's all known and understood, but it is history that's worth repeating, that sometimes is not always accurately represented in this place. Now, the more recent history is well known, is that for some time now I've been working a policy proposal through the internal government processes, constrained by the confidentiality of those processes to some extent, but a proposal to bring into place best practice harm minimisation measures that have been put to me by a range of experts, community sector advocates, and people with lived experience. And that's a model that builds on essentially an account-based system with pre-commitment limits and obviously provides a stronger self-exclusion regime if you link the venues together. So what has become the bugbear in this whole discussion, a pretty unremarkable central monitoring system which every other jurisdiction in Australia has, bar this one. So we were working that along through the Cabinet process. It has taken some time. There've been not an agreement to that proposal. It got sent for further consideration. It got sent for a market sounding. But I continue to operate within the scope of ordinary government processes and to work in good faith through the Cabinet processes with our colleagues in government to try and find a proposition that we could all agree to. We've had a range of discussions. As that was working its way through the Cabinet process, the Labor Party then launched publicly a counter policy, would be perhaps the best way to describe it, which bore no resemblance to what was being worked through the Cabinet process, but clearly, at one level was welcome. The Labor Party finally had a policy on poker machines. It's a starting point. Now, Dr Paterson has made some comments about the subsequent debate. I make no bones about the fact that as the Greens, and with a sense of conviction, we have argued vociferously for a better position. We have pointed out the flaws that we believe exist in the model that was put forward. I think we're entitled to do that. There was some sense in the debate earlier today that was a bit outrageous, to get in and have a go, to stand up for what you believe in, to argue for what we think is the best possible way forward. But that's what we're here for. We're not here to do politics. We're here to get the outcomes that we think are the right outcomes. And I make no bones about that. Most people in the Greens have come up through the non-government sector, and we know you have to fight to get things. You have to campaign hard. And that's what we've done. We have made the case for a better alternative. Now, where we find ourselves now is in a situation where, for all the bluster that's come from the Labor Party, we now have a bizarre outcome where they've squibbed it. What we have today is a bill where Dr Paterson had amendments that have gone through all the processes. To her credit, she's put them out in time. They've gone through the processes. There were some technical issues which I got advice from Jax and we communicated those to her, and she prepared further amendments and they were just technical issues. They were fine. We've got a set of amendments that are in order. They've not been ruled out of order by the Speaker, and they're ready to go. But for some reason, they're not being moved. They've squibbed it. Now, Dr. Paterson interjects saying 10:45. It is true that I sent an email to her and the Chief Minister at 10:45 this morning confirming our position. And I'll tell you why I did that. First thing is, the Greens have never said no to the Labor Party's proposition. Not once have I said no, or any of my colleagues said no to those amendments. What we have done is argued for a better approach. And we've done that publicly, everyone can see. We have argued clearly because we think this was a better outcome. But we've never said no to Dr. Paterson's proposal. Never said no to Dr. Paterson's proposal. Because we were striving for a better one. We've put a range of propositions to the Labor Party in the 8 or 10 weeks since that proposition was put on the table. We've put a range of propositions forward. We've talked to all sorts of people. We have worked hard to get an outcome. Now, Dr. Paterson says 10:45 this morning. Well, here's the facts of the matter. I spoke to the Chief Minister by telephone before midday yesterday and said to him, given that we've not been able to come to another arrangement, we will support Dr. Paterson's amendments. Now, the reason I spoke to the Chief Minister is that through this discussion between our two parties, the Chief Minister and I have taken the lead in discussing how our two parties would move forward in trying to strike proposals. That has been the relationship of negotiation, because when things get hard between our two parties, that's usually how it ends up. The Chief Minister and I have to sort things out. So the Chief Minister knew before lunch yesterday that we were prepared to support Dr. Paterson's amendments. Then walking into the chamber this morning, fortuitously, I walked in with Dr. Paterson and I said to her, because we hadn't had clarity at that point, I said, are you going to move your amendments today? And she said, I haven't quite decided.
I said no. No.
You said?
I said no.
Dr. Paterson.
What I heard then, if I'm mistaken, but what I heard Dr. Paterson say was, it's not clear, or something along those lines. I'm not going to blame Hansard for that one, Mr. Parton. It was, either way, it became evident to me that there was potentially some confusion. And that is why I then sent an email so that in clear writing, long before the debate started this morning, there was no uncertainty. So yes, by the time all the confusion sorted out, it was 10:45 this morning, but an hour and a half, hour and a quarter, before the debate started.
We've all had our party meetings, everything's done and done.
Thank you, Dr. Paterson. Thank you, Mr. Atry.
Now, Dr. Paterson interjects saying we've all had our party meetings. So what's going on in the Labor Party then? If I told the Chief Minister before lunch yesterday, what is going on in the Labor Party room, or caucus as they prefer to call it? What is going on? There's a serious question mark here about what the agenda is. A serious question mark. It is simply bemusing that knowing there was support and all the hoo-ha that we've seen about check out our new proposal and the campaigning Dr. Paterson's done and the dodgy social media posts she's put up saying, if you want pokies in the ACT, vote for the Greens. You know, it's clearly that she's after the political mileage, because when it comes to it, there is no conviction to actually bring the amendment forward. Now what we've got is, oh, we'll do it next time. You could have done it today. You could have done it today, and the Labor Party knew this more than 24 hours ago. They knew it more than 24 hours ago. She keeps interjecting, saying you could have told us. Well, we did tell you. And if in this business, 24 hours is plenty. It's not like the amendments weren't drafted. They were ready to go. They're approved. They're on the table. They're in the process. It's in the script that we all have that they're going to be moved. It is bizarre. They have squibbed it. It is clearly about politics. Now, when Dr. Paterson first brought her amendment out, it was interesting that people said to me, where'd this come from? And there were people who said, well, it's clearly a political hit job. And today that has been shown to be true.
What about your amendments?
Because
Braddock's amendments.
Now, Dr. Paterson continues to interject. She's saying, well, what about Mr. Braddock's amendments? We can't move them. It has become, and this has
Dr.
become...
Paterson.
She continues to interject, and yes, I'm getting there. I'll explain why they can't be moved. Because there was legal advice that one of them could not be sustained. And then we had a ruling from the Speaker this morning But there's no such barrier to Dr. Paterson's amendments. Oh no, they're fine.
They're in order.
They're actually in order, and that's, congratulations, that's good. So why don't you move them? Why don't you have the courage to actually move them? What is going on here? It is clear it is about some sort of political game, and we're going to see the memes over the next little week. We've all received the emails from the people Dr. Paterson's tried to wind up saying the Greens won't support my amendment. Well, it is bizarre. This is a new low point in this Assembly, and it's a real shame because this is such an important area of policy. We've been clear we don't think this is the best approach. We think there is a better way forward.
Yes, so do we.
But we are here to get outcomes, and we're prepared to go to Plan B because some outcome is better than no outcome. But courtesy of Dr. Paterson and her lack of conviction to actually move these amendments, there will be no progress. We could have today passed these amendments that the Labor Party has such conviction about, apparently, such conviction about, but they won't actually move them. Let's just move on with the debate, but we all know now what the true story is.
Members, the question is that clause 4 be agreed to. Ms. Chain.
Thank you, Mr. Assistant Speaker. I have one contribution to make, and that is that the Attorney-General doth protest too much.
Okay, so the question remains that clause 4 be agreed to. Those of that opinion say aye. Contrary, no. Declare the ayes have it. And is it the wish of the Assembly to take clauses 5 and 6 together? The question is that clauses 5 and 6 be agreed to. Those of that opinion say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. Declare the ayes have it. The question is that clause 7 be agreed to. Those of that opinion say aye. I call Mr. Rattenbury.
Thank you. Pursuant to Standing Order 182AB, I seek leave to move an amendment to this clause as it is minor and technical in nature.
So the question is, the amendment
Is leave granted?
is leave granted?
Yes.
Leave is granted.
Thank you, colleagues. I move amendment number 1, circulated in my name, and table a supplementary explanatory statement that goes with the amendment.
So the question is that Mr. Rattenbury's amendment be agreed to. Mr. Rattenbury?
No, I've spoken to this in the...
Okay, right. So the question is, Mr. Rattenbury's amendment be agreed to. Those for that opinion say aye. Contrary, no. I believe the question is that clause 7 as amended be agreed to. Those of that opinion say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. Declare the ayes have it. Is it the wish of the Assembly to take the remainder of the bill as a whole? Okay, so the question is that this bill as amended be agreed to. Those of that opinion say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. Declare the ayes have it. I understand it is the wish of the Assembly to suspend for lunch. That